idea. If I just want to do business just for earn money, okay, I will not different from the other. But I want to think more about sustainability, like okay, like too. We don't use or like a strategy, but we do it already. Especially for my third business, I focus on education. So if we talk about education, it should be number 4, right? In SGD. So why I decided to run this business, like not just about money, okay, for sure. But one thing that I try, what I learned is about reduce more human resources in Cambodia, especially start from young age. It should be good. So I decided to have a school. The name of like a bluebird about branding, but just want let you know that we're not just about money, but we want to do the best to produce young generation with quality. And at the same time, I start to know, okay, if my business focus more on business like upper class or middle class, so and how about for lower class or like yes, from low to medium, so how they can have ability or have money to go to school. Maybe they don't have any opportunity, right? So I decided to have another brand that focus more with two markets. One for lower class and for another one for middle class up to high class. Because I found it's very important for Cambodian people, especially for young people. So make it short, I just assume that okay, when we talk about sustainability, we will talk things about finance and talking about economics, and at the same time we're talking about environment and also I can say social empowerment as well. Why I can link environment to my school like activity in my school. I think that for the young student or young age, they want to learn more, they understand why the environment is important for them. Yeah. So we include many activities in our class and also outside activities to let them know what's important. And we also design like a slogan or try to inform our staff or like in general and our students to know about the environment. This should be a way of living. We cannot ignore about this. So this is what I try to do it. And when we talk about leadership, I can say I also learn it. Lead by learning and also learn my leads as well. Because no one is perfect, right? So every day I also need to learn, and until now, even I can say can be experienced in business, but still young. I need to learn, and there's no right or wrong, but I try to learn from my mistakes. So when I try to innovate my leadership, try to innovate it, I mean that okay, I try to create or design something like a new platform that's more easier for my team or for my staff, because we not just only count this or that person, okay, I want you to do this, that without any rule and regulation, without sometimes we also use technology as well, like for better communication and for create more productivity. Yeah. So we try to link it. And I can say that in green now we get more productivity, so that's why I have time to maintain another business and perform this way. Thank you.
Rita, she's a national champion. You know that she's a mother, she's a wife, 2 kids, and a super businesswoman. She's a real superhero. I think that one of the points that I think is very important is obviously sustainability starts from the education. You know, I mean, from the early days of the kids, you know, don't throw the bottles in the rivers and this kind of stuff. So I think that's starting from that. I mean, that's the starting point, and how we can actually educate and inculcate basically people about the impact of the actions towards the environment, but also towards the peers and towards the respecting basically the peers. And all the impact that's actually their action may, have to the society. Ganesh.
Yeah, and so we throw the same question to Ganesh. Yes, as the founder of your company, how do you think your leadership is influencing this culture within your workplace and your company in terms of pushing for sustainability?
What do you do, Saura? What Saura is?
So Saura started off 5 years ago, and a friend of mine both of us sold our iPads for 1,900 and started a company which we do water treatment plants. And now, after 5 years in Southeast Asia, we own close to about 60 water treatment plants. In Maldives, we are building a 50 megawatt floating solar farm. So that's what Saura does. We are into water and also renewable solar. But answering your question, I'll just backtrack a bit to 1600s. The word sustainability actually in 1610 means bearable. In 1845, it means defensible. So you want to sustain a building when you get attacked. So that's sustainability. In 1965, the dictionary says that sustainability is capable of being continued at a certain level, right? But in the 2000s, the Brundtland Commission said that sustainable development is a development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So that is the new definition of sustainability. But in terms of Saura, I mean, we don't go into the office every day and say, let's be sustainable today. And everyone will look at me and say, we have a crazy CEO. And we also don't use the word SDGs. But what we feel is in the company, it's about, we used to have MDG, the Millennium Development Goals, now it's the SDG. And it's up to 2030, so I don't know what's going to happen if maybe it's an XYZ after that. But I think in our company, what we do is we practice radical generosity. So what we started off, when we started work in a village, that's how we started off the company. So what we do is, the current world currently moves on balanced generosity. So for example, it's my birthday, I get a pen, and then next year I know my friend expects me to give him something better, maybe a paperclip and a pen. So that's balanced generosity. But what we practice in the company is radical generosity, which means I do something good to someone, that person pays it forward to someone else, and then the cycle continues, and hopefully it comes back to us. So that's what every week in the company, what we do is we put aside $100 and say, okay, every staff come together and say, what do you want to do for this week? So that's what we do in the company. So very small efforts, but we feel that by inculcating values like this, we see staff members also doing it to the children and say, I'm going to give you 10 ringgit this week. A staff member of ours, told his 5-year-old kid, and then the 5-year-old kid actually does something good with $10, right? So that's the value or the concept that we have within the company. Very small, but we hope try to spread radical generosity.
Actually, I'll add something to that. So that's a very interesting concept. So I think likewise, same and grab, right? Where I don't go into the office and I'm like, sustainability, right? Again, I think people think I'm slightly mad. But I think from my point of view, it's about injecting empathy into everything that you do, right? So very simple example. An example that we face every single day. So our drivers will go to our Grab office, and usually we send either communications or we teach drivers how to use the app. And more often than not, I think we estimate about 40 to 45% of our drivers in Phnom Penh can't actually read and write, right? So then they do face a lot of difficulties in their day-to-day work, right? Even things like, for example, taking a licensing test, right, or going for road safety trainings. So then it becomes a challenge for them. So I think it's sometimes indexing on the empathy, thinking how can we serve our drivers better, create solutions that are relevant to them, and sometimes even going above and beyond than what we usually do, right? Same thing for passengers, right? We have empathy about our passengers whereby they want a safe ride from point A to point B, right? Then the difficulty comes in whereby we index so much effort in trying to improve the quality of our drivers. In every day we think about how can our rides today be safe and the rides tomorrow be even safer, right? Technically we don't need to, but currently we spend easily 4 hours a day, right? And my safety and quality manager spends 4 hours a day bringing drivers in for retraining purposes. And this is things that go beyond behind the scenes that necessarily people are not privy to, right? But it's also having empathy that, hey, every ride we want it to be a safe ride, and we work over in depth on ensuring that our drivers deliver the best quality service and our passengers will always be in the most safe position possible.
Any maybe some reaction from the other side? I mean,
just I think Ganesh said it perfectly. It's about sustainability. It's about meeting the needs of the present and the needs of the future. For business, the future, meeting current needs, yes, is important, right? You've got to create something, make a product, sell it, right? But markets change. The need, the demands, the desires of consumers change constantly. We live in a world today where consumers want new products. They want them quicker. They want them higher quality, lower cost, and they want them now. They want them to include technology. So business, we're forced to respond to that, right? And rather than being constantly in a reactive state, we try to put ourselves into a proactive state. We want to think about the needs of the future. What's the next big trend? What's the next big, what's the next development of the smartphone? So what's also important, especially in our case, is we're addressing the future needs of many different groups at the same time. Ultimately, it's the consumer, it's the market, which is driving our reaction. But at the same time, we have to think about the future needs of what do foreign investors, we want them to come to Cambodia, what are their needs and future needs? We want SMEs in Cambodia to grow and develop. What are their current needs and what are their future needs going to be? We talked about young Cambodian entrepreneurs, or let's just call it the young Cambodian demographic. It's an incredible demographic. It's a demographic that very few countries in the world have. And in my opinion, one of Cambodia's greatest assets, but it remains an untapped asset. So in my work, my project, the SME cluster, we're looking at what are the current needs of we'll call the millennial generation, and what are the needs of the next generations after that. And we can take that to many, many different levels. We can take it down to the individual factory worker. What are their current needs? What are their future needs? Now, how do we address all of that in one time is a very, we'll say, complex solution, but there is a solution. If we had 12 hours, I could explain it to you, but...
No, we don't.
Sorry, just speaking to some of the points that Charles was talking about. My perspective as someone who is outside of business and looking into business is that there really is a business case for integrating sustainability into a business model and strategy and operations. And I think what can really challenge business and actually be an incentive for business is to really focus on those very marginalized kind of remote communities. And look at how can you create products and services that would address their need for quality education, quality health, which can then in turn sort of enable them to become part of a productive workforce. And therefore actually contribute to economic growth in a country. And also raise the demand for businesses and services. I mean, I don't mean this in terms of increasing a consumerist society, because actually that goes against some of the principles of sustainability. But what I mean is that businesses can still grow if they kind of look at most cost-effective ways of providing products and services. And I guess the second point I want to make was about the involvement of women in the workforce. Because I think if you look at the statistics of many countries, GDP can sort of increase quite significantly if there is more women who participate, particularly in the formal labor force, in a productive way. So I think these two factors, and also creating an enabling environment for women to engage in the workforce, is looking at issues such as equal pay for equal work,
in terms of maternity and childcare benefits, creating those kind of regulatory environment for women to fully participate, and also to climb up the ladder and not just be workers but also be managers, middle and high level managers. There are statistics to show that that would also increase economic growth in the country. So just want to make this clear.
The gender pay gap is actually a very, I guess, important point, because I think that women in the Asia Pacific actually earn less than 1/3 of their male counterparts for the same job. This is actually very striking statistic about this gap between actually male and female workers. Maybe Ganesh, you want to react? I saw you looking a lot.
Wow. So maybe even here, I don't know if I can get out right. So I feel that on a business point of view, ecosystem is dynamic, right? Today you have different regulations. Tomorrow you have, next week the government says something new, and in Asia governments always say something new every week. But the business also have to be sustainably dynamic to react to this situation, right? So I feel, we live in a finite world. We live in a finite world, but then but the business, the growth tends to be infinite, right? For construction companies, they say, development is good. For NGOs, they say, it's sustainable. So now construction companies take the word sustainable development, right? To make the people who are making a difference are the young ones. The one that goes out there and say, let's do a strike, and then we have to protect the environment. So then you have this company say, we are doing sustainable development. Our product are now eco-friendly. So those are the things that groups are pressuring companies to move into. So you need a balance, but you also have some groups that tend to be not so smart, if I may say, because they go in and attack an industry which maybe traditionally that's how they do, but then when they attack, there's no alternative. So you can make noise, you can say, you're doing something wrong, but everybody, and there's always something better than something, right? But also it's important to give an alternative. So we do a water system for the oil palm industry, which is recently, Malaysia, Singapore is heavily, because of the haze. So when we speak to oil palm owners, which has 1 million hectares of land in Indonesia, has about 500,000 people working in the plantation. They say, it's the smallholders sometimes that cause problem, that they get affected. So sometimes it's important to also listen on the other side rather than jumping into the conclusion. So that's as a business point of view, it's important for NGOs to also understand what are some businesses are doing at the level best, and also when they say they are level best, it also has to be financially sound. So you can't say replace all structures with housing with bamboo. But then it doesn't make sense, because every 5 years probably you have to build a new house. So it has to make also financial sense for businesses to adopt sustainable practices. So that's what I feel.
I think it's linked. The topic that you just mentioned about this palm oil, those companies who are actually investing in those very industry. It's also related to the human rights. Maybe Sunari, you can actually touch upon that, because it's very an important agenda, obviously, for the UN, to make sure that the companies that are involved in whatever industries do actually respect the human rights. Not as a choice, because they don't have a choice. But how do you see that?
Firstly, I think I would like to demystify the perceptions around human rights. We know that this is a holistic approach to upholding people's rights in terms of civil, political, but also socio-economic, environmental, cultural rights. So we need to look at this from all those lenses. That's one. And secondly, again, I think it makes business business sense for businesses to take into account, the human rights aspects of their business. For instance, when it comes to environment protection, for instance, I mean, this is something that was just raised. And so the point is that, when you talk about sustainable development, you're talking about the rights of future generations as well, right? So then how do we conceive of businesses that are not just looking at profits for now or the medium term, but also the long term, in terms of protecting those natural resources that are finite for future generations. So, and not just looking at the bottom line of profit. So I mean, that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it could be on gender equality, which was just already raised by you in terms of equal pay for equal work, for instance, which again goes down to also how society is modeled on an equitable and an equality principles, which again would contribute to the overall social cohesion, stability of a society that again can then work together towards productivity and development of a country. And then thirdly, if you were to look at something like labor standards, I mean, again, in many countries, there are already regulations and laws in place about labor standards, decent work standards, safety in the workplace, etc. And I think it makes sense for businesses to already adapt their businesses, if they haven't at this point, to those regulations and those laws, and that will come if they're not already in place and not already being implemented. So in that sense, it's just sensible business practice, I think, to take into account all those things.
Indeed. I think that's Charles is jumping.
No, she said it.
Okay,
It's
cool.
sensible business practice.
Indeed. Yeah.
And I think it doesn't only have to do with the practices. I think like what Sonali heavily emphasized is really looking into that cohesion between policies and practices and strategies that enables or creates that enabling environment for sustainable businesses or those who aspire to be sustainable.
I'm trying to go back a little bit to the quote that we earlier about this word of profit. I think it's also is important that it's not a difficult thing to have profit. Obviously, all business need to make money, otherwise we don't sustain. So sometimes they don't. So I think it's important that we go back to a little bit of does it actually make any commercial sense from your business point of view and from an investment point of view to actually be considered as a sustainable business. Let's be frank actually. But do you actually make money? Guys, do you make money?
For being sustainable.
Being sustainable.
Sustainable is expensive. Right? Sustainable, every company, every CFO that you meet say, oh my gosh, because of the SDGs, now we have to put in place certain measures and it's expensive. But when you say expensive, it may be expensive for the first 1 year, 2 years. But if you look at a sustainable business in the long run, then probably you spread your costs and then you have more benefit along the way. So to me, I also sit on a board of an investment firm. First, as we look into new companies, the first thing that we look is financial sustainability. Is the company is going to be financially sustainable, right? The company, if it's only impact, is saying that let's stop the use of straws because the turtles in the sea and all that. So that's good. That's on the NGO perspective, we support. But that's not what we invest in. But if the company says, plastic use is bad, but here you go, a solution, that can, revolutionize the plastic industry. So those are the companies that we look at. So the world is moving into a direction. Everyone is getting conscious about what they consume. We invested in a company that are making sugarcane lids, and then so this company is recently we just got them partnered with Starbucks. So they're doing a global supply. So those are the companies that we look at. So at the end of the day, it's financial sustainability. If it doesn't make sense financially, then we don't go to the next. We tell them, we can link you up with our CSR funds. Then probably you can do a CSR campaign. So that's where making money, I feel it's important because that gets you going also. Because end of the day, we're all humans. We got to put food on the table. And then you want to drive a nice car. You want a nice home. So those are the factors that keep some people moving forward.
Can I just respond just to one point? So about driving a nice car and having a
Oh my God, your Grab is here,
I use Grab.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is also about revisiting our value system, right? Because the more you think about super luxury things and nice things and wanting to have an innumerable number of consumables, the more you're driving consumerism and going against that whole concept of sustainability and looking at the future of future generations. So I think businesses also play a big role in how you could inform, change the mindset exactly around consumerism.
And let me turn back to Rita, because you mentioned about a little bit from your school business, and you said that you are actually addressing some of the demand from the bottom of the pyramid, basically the low-income households and customers, basically. And so that's, we all somehow familiar with that concept of bottom of the pyramid, So maybe Rita, you can actually talk more about, actually, does it make business sense actually to build a school and to offer school curriculum to, underserved and, let's say, poor community?
Yeah, I can share that because as a business person, we also need to do about marketing as well, like what a customer needs. Before I have to, can say like a separate brand, why I don't focus just on one brand, like make it more bigger and why did you create another one like this for lower class or medium to low or something. Yeah, I can say not just about things about, okay, actually we think about sustainable, but at the same time we also think about marketing as well, like I mentioned earlier, because our parents, some of them, they also want to study at our school, like the Bluebird, but they cannot afford it also. Cannot afford it also. We found that, so how we can have them also support them, even they want to do study with us. So I, being as a mother and also a parent, I also understand well about this feeling. So that's why I come up with another idea. And I just buy a local a school. I can say the school almost bankrupt at the time. They sold 2 days. And also we would talk about like a lesson learned, like how I get money from that. Because I think that if we can buy the school or buy any business in a lower price, because the business is also bankrupt, right? So if we can develop it and make it stronger, we can sell the shareholder, or we can sell the whole business higher price. So I also see about a long version as well, like what I can develop. So back to the school business, I can share like I mentioned, because we think that Cambodian people, especially for young students, they need more education. One country can develop because people more educated, especially for young students. And some parents, they may not trust about public school. I don't say it's not good, but some parents, if they have enough ability, they will send their children to to the private school because they believe the quality of education. And because of the market need as well, like even my school, we need to provide more like even I don't know how to speak Chinese, but I need to add Chinese language to my school because market need. So we need to decide, okay, we need to have Chinese language or not. Actually, we just focus more on this and Khmer only because we try to combine it. Even we are assumed, not assumed, I mean like we practice it to be international school because we brought a curriculum from England, so we assume we design our program that fits to our market. So because our parents, they want their child to know more about my language and about culture as we are Cambodian, so that's why we never forget our culture. this the way that they try to promote. I mean, like in general, because when the staff offering made the students they know it, so they can keep in mind, and they will have to inform or sharing with their parents. And for our plan, not just only focus on young age, we will try to develop until I mean, like high school students, because we can easily to influence them, to give them direction about what is not about like sustainability, but I mean in general what they should contribute back to society.
Yeah, that's really good. Actually, I just.
I wanted to add one thing real quick. You talked about, say, the poor, right? Integrating the poor. We don't use the word poor. Right? Here in Cambodia, I look at it as latent talent, latent natural resource, latent asset. Right? So, yes, and the cluster project that I'm working on is solely, let's say, designed for, let's say, increasing the capabilities and the capacities of the SME. The Cambodian government has put in place a little thing called the Industrial Development Policy, which focuses on diversifying or enabling SME growth in order to diversify foreign investment in manufacturing. At the same time, to move away from, let's say, lower value industries such as garment, which is moving elsewhere now, and replacing that with higher value industry. So yeah, you're left with a very wide base of, say, I'm not going to call it poor. It's not unskilled labor. It's latent talent. Right? It's business's responsibility, and in our case, to put in place an ecosystem inside the cluster which enables that latent talent to grow and to develop. So I won't go into what we've put into the cluster, but a lot of the, we'll say, the core initiatives, the core programs inside the cluster project, the cluster business that we're getting into, depend on having that base, a very strong base of latent talent. Right? So SMEs, startups, entrepreneurs, farmers, we need to have a very strong supply chain. So that entire base, I think what we're focused on, one of the reasons SMEs can't grow is because they can't access finance. But the true reason they can't access finance is financial illiteracy. They don't understand. So we have to put in place an ecosystem or a program to educate, which is what we're doing. And I think this, from WorldBridge's perspective, WorldBridge historically is involved in this. We're looking for diverse solutions. We're looking for pioneering solutions, which reflect well on Cambodia and the group as a whole. So over the years, we've done things like affordable housing project, SEZ, and free trade zone. These are all new. And the cluster is our latest project in that. But that's how we look at it. So I think to some extent, it's not written anywhere, and I hope my boss isn't listening. But to an extent, maybe more so in developing nations, the private sector needs to be able to look closely at, be able to assess, if not accept, initial risk versus long-term reward. This is a difference, I think, which is important, especially in a country such as Cambodia. So the private sector needs to look at risk versus long-term reward and be willing to take that risk.
Yeah, maybe I want.
Don't repeat that to my boss.
Just let you know.
Edit that.
Since I have the web of financial literacy, I also want to share, because right now for Ministry of Healthcare, we also want to promote more, because we don't just only, some people they know how to run business, but they don't know how to manage the fund.
Exactly.
So that's why we cooperate with NBC to make sure that we can put provide enough knowledge or training that they can understand financial literacy. And I'm sure if all SME they know well about how to set up, how to manage their business, they will think about sustainable or sustainability next time. Because right now people need to survive, run business, they also need to survive the business or doing smoothly as well. But if you cannot make it stable, you cannot think more about successful. So I think in general, I mean like even Ministry of Women Affairs, they also work hard because it's linked to gender equality. We also try to promote more women. They want them to have more independent, I mean like financial independence. So when they have enough ability, they are well educated, they have a strong financial, they will think more, and I can say that they have more broad knowledge about it. So sustainability will happen soon.
Thank you, Rita. I think that's quickly.
Quickly. I think poor is there's a problem in defining poor because we define poor. Metrics that we use is financial. So I think we have to redefine poor. You know, you can be a rich man, but you can be poor also in terms of other aspects. So I feel that's just small food for thought.
You know, so thank you guys for sharing your perspective. As you know, we want to make this talk much more interactive. You know, so you just don't sit and watch a movie. You also contribute to the discussions, and so I would like to turn to the audience. Okay, first the ones who are actually sitting here and who find a way to come here, but also the ones who are actually watching us on Facebook and on YouTube. So maybe we can take some reactions, and please be very candid. You know, if you want to criticize Brad, please do my guess.
On the hot seat here.
So we have some microphones floating around. Laura and Paul. Paul here, yeah. Please. So raise your hands. We have one hand over there. Okay, let's take two more. We got two over there. There's like an auction, you know, like that. Please introduce yourself.
Yes. Hello, my name is Nelson Nkrumah. So I asked about this on Slido, but after Charles, your comments about what the private sector's responsibility is, I wanted to ask this up front. I wanted to get it specifically for you, Charles. What are you doing within the cluster to encourage latent talent, to reach them, and to actually move them into the innovation economy, the digital economy? And then for the panel at large, I'd like to get an overview, since there is a pretty diverse grouping here, of what is going on either from the government side and from the side of multilateral institutions, even from large businesses in Cambodia, to really kind of change the mindset around investing in sustainability, whether that is incorporating that earlier into investment thesis, into the due diligence process, incentives for businesses at every stage, even disincentives like fines. Can you give an overview of what that looks like, or what it could look like?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we just, Charles, you can respond to it. I take over the second one because actually your second questions will be addressed in the second stage about responsible investment and how we actually scale those businesses. So be patient, stick around. Charles.
Okay, thank you. Good question, lots of answers. Which side do I have? Then what are we doing to encourage latent talent, as I termed it, within clusters? I think first and foremost, we're not looking at just a solution or developing latent talent just for today's needs. We're looking at a long-term development of, I want to say, that talent, and then that carries on to the next generation, So, and also we're not looking at developing talent for one cluster. We're looking at multiple clusters throughout the country. So we're looking, Cambodia's future. I would say its latent talent is not all sitting here in Phnom Penh. it's real talent, it's latent talent, it's sitting in Battambang, in Poipet, Sihanoukville, wherever. Right? It still might be in junior high school, I don't know, but it's all latent talent to us. Now, what are we doing to encourage that? First, this is going to sound a bit odd in terms of an answer, is we're not addressing today's needs or today's state of affairs, which is, in my terminology, I say Industry 2.0, which 2.0 is reliance on manual labor, reliance on electricity, repetitive tasks. In order for Cambodia to achieve a sustainable economic growth and sustainable future, right, we need to look at an industry, or what's the term used is Industry 4.0 future. Cambodia needs to leapfrog into that. Now that's a huge ask, right? And we start looking at, don't use the word poor, but we look at the latent talent. How do we get them from an Industry 2.0 mindset or set of skills to a 4.0, right? So it's, I would say, a bit more than encouraging. It's also providing an ecosystem, providing the means, the access to a student loan, right? Providing the means and the access to a financial loan, right? So the way that we're looking at this is through, first with a lot of partnerships and working very closely with the government. That's one. So, you know, we have an SME bank. Yes, that's great, but as you said, if the SME doesn't understand how to fill out the application form, it doesn't mean anything. Same with skills development. So what we've done in terms of encouraging and then developing that latent talent was we are coming up with, or have envisioned and will ultimately put in place, a new type of approach to learning. And since youth in Cambodia are very much interested in technology, you know, more than 78% of the population is what we call a digital native, right? So the young factory worker, yeah, they make $170 a month now as minimum wage, going up later in the year, but every one of them has a smartphone, right? So we use that. Two fronts. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't have the latest on smartphone penetration. Last I heard, 153%. But factory worker who's earning $170 a month minimum wage has a smartphone, and that factory worker doesn't have the time to sit in a classroom. So we have to provide training to them in a manner which suits their needs. And so we do that using an e-learning platform, right? Global classroom. So we will provide that within the classroom. It's not about encouraging, I want to say, development of that talent. It's giving them the means to build their own future, figure out what they want to do in a career, giving them means to achieve that. You know, the terminology that I'm using is about removing the despair event horizon, right? So there's a point in many Cambodians' lives, many SMEs' lives, you know, they come to a point and they say, I give up. I'll never be able to access that. I'll never be able to do it. So we have to change that despair event horizon, move it back, if not eliminate it. So yes, that skills online or e-learning platform is a very important aspect of our cluster, and also I would say providing an environment which is attractive to expertise and knowledge from other countries, from FDI. I won't go into about the cluster model, but in many ways the way the cluster model can work is instead of a foreign manufacturer building a factory and training workers, what we're encouraging foreign manufacturers to do, and I have many examples already, we say just supply your standards, your requirements, share your knowledge, your expertise, and help to train. Right? We import that and put that in front of SMEs, workers, entrepreneurs, and startups. And we support it with an ecosystem of these various platforms, services, access to things. So that's how we're encouraging not just what we call the latent talent, whether it be workers, but also latent startups, latent entrepreneurship, latent SMEs.
Thank you. I think that you will have the opportunity to further, I mean, if you give the mic to Charles, I think 2 hours, so you will have the opportunity to dive into more details about this concept of the SME cluster and the particularity of it. I mean, that's extremely important. I want to give another, there was 2 other mic running around. Yes, please, sir.
My name is Madran. I'm from the National Bank of Cambodia. Actually, there is the question I want to ask about how the business is going to move to catch up with SDGs as well as for ESG with the revolution of the fourth industry. And then how can we do, as you mentioned that the rate of jumping to technologies of Cambodian people is very high. With 16 million people population, we have around 12 million is an adult population, and the subscribe of mobile phone is 19 million. It is around 1/5, 1/5. So in this case, how the literacies as well as financial literacy can help to support this group?
Who wants to go on?
How do we phrase that?
Yeah. How do you rephrase, I mean, in one sentence of questions? Maybe that's going to have the...
I mean, how can we build human resources to catch up with the fourth revolution?
So that's for you, Charles. How do you build the next generations to catch up with
Industry 4.0?
Industry 4.0?
Well, it's not going to happen overnight, okay? How do we build the next generation? I think we won't get into a long discussion about the education system, but there's steps already being taken within the education system here in Cambodia. But to catch up to a 4.0, you need to start looking at what are the critical skills required for a 4.0. And it's not necessarily math and science. Okay? It's about critical thinking, situational awareness, project management, ability to make decisions on your own independently. Okay? So all that technology that's there, it's not just industry 3.0 is about robotics and machines just working and working. 4.0 is about the return to humanity, bringing humanity back into the equation. Okay? Now, in specific, I'm talking about a German industry 4.0. There's a distinct difference in all this. All right? So catching up, we have to teach the right skills. We have to prepare the next generation. So yeah, we were joking. The funny example was every classroom needs to be filled with Lego bricks. So you have to begin to rethink or relook at the type of education. There's other types of, let's say, group learning or group activities. So education system. Second, catching up is to foster an environment of collaboration and innovation and entrepreneurship. That has to happen, and it will happen within our cluster because we're putting together the ecosystem to enable that through, how to say what's their cross mixing, or putting manufacturers, suppliers, farmers, we're putting them in the same setting as academia, R&D, government services, government experts. UNDP will have an office in my cluster, I hope. But we put all of those groups together in one location and let the natural spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation take over. Because remember, those SMEs and providers, they're businesses. Right? We talked about it before. Businesses need to make profit. They can't remain stagnant. They need to innovate. So we provide that environment for innovation. That is German 4.0. Right? That leap is not that hard. It's about building that ecosystem. But to make that leap, as I said earlier, those skills of decision making, creativity, situational awareness, project management, what's the other one I'm forgetting? But that's what you have to put in place. And I think already many, well, at least the ones I've met, many young Cambodians are very entrepreneurial, very creative, right? I mean, look at some of what the young ICT sector in Cambodia has done already. It's amazing, right? They're not sitting in, Singapore or the EU where they've got access to millions and millions of dollars. No, they're doing it on a laptop sitting in Amazon. That's Cambodia's greatest asset.
Maybe I'll add something as well.
Sure, yeah.
I think it's more than just also preparing for the next generation. I think it's also about providing opportunities for the current generation, right? An example, when I look at Grab, right? So I joined the Grab Cambodia office about 3 months back. Been in Singapore all my life, very sheltered Singaporean. The first time I used computers was probably at age 8, 9. When I come over here, in the Grab Cambodia office, I'm the only expat in the Grab Cambodia office. Everyone else are local, right? And when I speak to my colleagues, and then I chat with them over lunch, I ask them about their background, and they tell me that, the first time they learn about computers is at 20 years old. First time sometimes is in university. And I find it remarkable that they have managed to learn so fast, right? And I think also Grab, we as PALs and we are champions for hyperlocality. If possible, even though I'm an expat, I want to spend time developing the local talent, spend time entrusting them, and my goal is within 2-3 years, the entire office is run locally, no need for an expat.
Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Alice. I'm the fundraising and partnership manager of Tap Effect, which is a pipewater infrastructure provider, social enterprise. So we are the current generation. We try to do something for rural Cambodia. We are currently in the fundraising phase, so both equity, grant, and debt. And my question is quite specific and can be asked to any of you because I think it could be very interesting to have your insight. My question, as representing my social enterprise, is should we communicate and act upon SDGs when I feel that most donors, including trusts, funds, foundations, do not integrate SDGs as part of their agenda. I've seen that many don't even mention them. So do you think that when we are, especially for us in the fundraising phase, should we actually look at the SDGs as a strategy? That makes sense. Thank you.
That's a very pertinent question. I think that we can also address some of your questions in the next stage. But since you have Ganesh sitting here, who is also an investor, so maybe you can actually give some insight in that sense. Do actually investors integrate the SDGs jargon in the decision?
Like I said, if it's going to be based on SDG, which is up to 2030, then it's a very short-lived business. I mean, a few investors usually convene in Singapore. What we discuss among ourselves is sometimes, like I said, we look at the financial sustainability aspect first. Second, then the impact. But usually the impact part is can be stitched into any business. Is the business owner willing to stitch? That's a different question. But any business, for example, AirAsia started off as a normal business, and then suddenly AirAsia in Malaysia said we are a social enterprise because now everyone can fly, right? So some people abuse such, sustainability. But for business, I feel keep SDG aside. Every business has a positive impact. I feel, if you are cutting down, let's say, you used to travel from point A to point B 2 hours, but then your technology cuts it down to half an hour, so that's a positive impact. So every business has a positive impact. But how do you tell the story, and also how do you build a business model around it? That's important. Yeah. So I feel SDG, it's just another word, to say, hey, we champion SDG 6, 7, 8. Some people, some investment we see, they tend to solve all 17 SDGs. You're like, what is your business, right? Are you the new government? So I think you have to also have a small element of that because it's something that's trending and everyone tends to look at it, but it shouldn't be the main focal point.
How much do you need to raise? How much do you need?
A lot.
A lot.
Okay, let's stop.
What the business?
Say something very briefly on your question. So, I mean, the way I look at it, it's not just about the sustainable, the SDGs. I mean, that's almost become like a brand name, right? But it's also about just survival for the planet. I mean, we know about ancient civilizations that go back 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years that used sustainable water management practices, for instance, only because they realized they needed to do that to be able to have a decent living in the underwater because of global warming. I mean, these are just becoming issues that people are facing every day on the ground. And I would argue that it's no longer just an NGO issue. It's everyone's issue. So therefore, I think it just makes a lot of sense to adopt those practices. I mean, they've just now been branded as SDGs, but as I said, they've been used for thousands of years by different communities across the world.
I just want to add one quote. This is by LSE, the London School of Economics, that says that the writer, Jason Pickle, he refers to SDGs promotion as the world's largest advertising campaign. The social media operation that has Beyonce, One Direction, Malala, and countless other major personalities in the roster with the likes of Gary Lineker and Gareth Bale. So, I think what I'm trying to say is, regardless SDGO, but as long as you show there's an impact, 20 years, 30 years, it can be small impacts, but when you put together, it contributes to the bigger picture. But it's good because the SDG gets people and businesses to start thinking about it, right? So the SDG is crucial, but also it shouldn't be, the main theme of the society.
Yeah, you don't need to use SDGs to sell your idea. The term that we use, we talk about greenwashing. Don't do greenwashing. You don't need it. All right, talk about the strength of your idea, your business model. Any good investment fund or venture capitalist is going to ask you, he will recognize or she will recognize that, okay, in your venture, in your business, whatever, you require the use of electricity. A good investment fund is going to ask you, where are you getting your electricity from? Right? Because they automatically recognize that there's differences in cost of electricity. There's pros and cons of grid power. There's pros and cons of solar power. So a good, let's say, investment fund is going to ask you that question. Are you using solar power or grid power? And if you say, I'm using solar power, of course. You don't need to say, it's an SDG, I'm using solar power. Just say, I'm using solar power. That's included in my investment plan. You'll get that fund without saying SDGs.
I think using the SDGs could also be a way of measuring the impact versus, you could use the SDGs as the foundation of measuring how much impact, positive impact, to be specific, that you're making.
So if I may, that's why I'm asking this question actually, because I would have assumed before actually entering this fundraising phase that foundation would and donors would actually use them more as an impact tool, but actually not that much.
I think if an investor uses SDG as the main point of investing, then you shouldn't be talking to him.
You can come talk to our venture capital company as well.
Worldbridge has a lot of money.
No, we have a venture capital company as well called Octane. So we love talking with people like you. I'll introduce you to Tapas next.
Maybe let's go online because there's some questions. And let me just, how many people are watching us online? Website. Yeah, they check it. Oh my God, we are almost 200 people watching us. Wow, that's a big question. So let's show you something. Paul, if there's any questions from
Yes, we've had a lot of questions come in from Slido. We're going to ask you guys too. So, number one, we mentioned quite regularly the need to balance profitability with sustainable action. How do each of you deal with shareholders or investors that are usually short-term driven?
Actually, maybe you can take that one.
Yeah, so I think now you see a shift in shareholder mentality, to be honest, right? It's not about short-term gains, but how do you then stay on the long term and long-term value creation, right? And I think it's also a shift in how businesses do our business, and this is where we believe the future holds, right? And I really don't think, to be honest now, if it's a shareholder value, they definitely wouldn't be looking at what are the short-term needs, right? I think being part of a company that has raised multiple rounds of funding, right? We definitely see the change, and I don't think it's as much a problem as what the person asking me may think it is. Yeah, we definitely see a change on my side.
Would anybody else like to speak to running into conflict with investors?
I think it's important before the investment even being made that you got to understand, you got to take your time, because investing is like getting into a marriage, and also like divorcing is very expensive, so you have to really understand what are they in for. So really, getting direction, making sure that both are on the same page, that's important. So I think conflict in investors, I've seen some companies that we tried to invest in the Philippines, they do, transport services, but the problem was the entrepreneur was also tapping into the company funds for personal gain, for personal trips, sponsoring the entrepreneur every time, South Africa or, partying in Bali. So those are the things that I feel as investors, we also have to do due diligence on all parts of the entrepreneur.
And the reverse as well.
Yeah. Agree.
Maybe the last question from the
Yes, we got one more. This will be a little bit of a slam dunk for Samai and Brad, I think. What can be initiatives to establish people and eco-friendly transport systems to ease traffic congestion, reduce accidents, and relieve environmental issues here in Cambodia?
Maybe other companies can go first.
Yeah. Maybe Joe can actually talk about a little bit on the Sumai project.
Yeah, I think the opportunity brings up about Sumai.
Yeah, well, good opportunity for us. UNDP engaged in a very unique partnership with Grab, and this is really to help the government of Cambodia to tackle the issues of traffic congestion and also to promote better road safety. And I know just saying that it's like general, and you may want to ask how is that possible? Like every day we sit in traffic. It's one of these things that it's a very hard issue to crack. We cannot change it overnight. Like what Charles said, these development issues we cannot crack just overnight. It takes a lot of critical thinking and strategizing and also coordination, trying to get everyone on board, because it is not only the government's responsibility, but also us as citizens, because we all use the roads. It has to start from us as responsible road users. But basically, the Sumai project, or we call it the Sustainable Urban Mobility for All initiative, this tackles all of those issues. How do we better improve traffic congestion? And this is starting from behavioral change, and this is one of the hard things, or the challenging things rather, that we have to look into. Because you can't just simply force people to follow the rules because one person decides to cut the road. Then you have that internal struggle of, should I also cut the road or should I follow the traffic light? And it's not only a problem of traffic congestion, but we also look into the issue of air pollution, because heavy percentage of air pollution comes from transportation. And we also look into, again, going back to providing skills development, and this is enhancing the capability of the young professionals and young people who have creative solutions to improve traffic congestion and also road safety. And it's really good to have Grab with this project and also the Ministry of Public Works and Transport because you see this very strong and dynamic coordination between public and private partnership. So, yeah.
Which is exactly goal number 17, right?
Yes.
SDG.
Indeed.
I would say Sumine hits mostly all.
Yeah, so it's largely leveraging on public-private partnerships, right? Whereby Grab is in 8 countries in Southeast Asia. How do we take lessons learned from other more developed markets, for example, Singapore? How do we take solving traffic congestion issues that we face in Jakarta, right? Taking all these learnings and applying what's relevant to Cambodia. So I think that's where the strength is.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna wrap up a little. Almost cursed. So we're gonna. It's not live. So we're gonna wrap up a little bit the sessions, I guess, and the next stage we will actually dive into more, as I say, in terms of how do we support, scale, and accelerate businesses in their journey of becoming more sustainable. Is that?
But also to add into that is accessing to finance. And I think that's one of the biggest questions is, okay, we are a sustainable business here in Cambodia, but who do we go to? Who do we ask money for? Support for financing?
I think within the Cambodian ecosystem, there's already good players, platforms that actually bring access to financing, connecting you. So one of the partners that we work at Saura, it's called Platform Impact. I think you've got to check them out. It's an amazing company that connects you to credible investors, and they do the due diligence. So they are a matchmaking platform. So I feel if you have the chance, please. One of the staff directors is sitting over there. Please speak to him. The guy in the pink shirt.
David, maybe wave and say hi to everyone again.
Good, very good. So this next session will be talking about responsible investment. It's also a particular example from Rita, for example, who how to use the money from your wedding basically to sponsor and finance her first business. So that's a particular, it's a personal story. So I think that's basically try to tackle that issues of accessing to finance, but the good finance, the responsible finance. So stick around. I think that we're gonna wrap up right now because we are overstretching. There's no commercial break, so there's no one who's sponsoring us. But there will be basically outside some refreshment. Please, those people will stick around. So grab them, and then continue the discussions further. And we will, the next stage, having a wonderful also speakers coming along with us, like Sanmeta and Rachana from the Association of Bank of Cambodia. So we're going to wrap up a little bit. Maybe a last word from each of you. Maybe Sonali, you want to start. So last words on this first session.
A lot has been said again and again, and I was not trying to say that the SDGs and the Sustainable Development Framework are not important. What I was trying to say is that it just has brought it to a point where I think people have just come to realize the importance of it, because the global development goals were identified through a worldwide consultation process which brought together the views of people across the world in terms of identifying what were the main priorities for people in their day-to-day lives. And then those got captured through a framework and came through the non-government civil society framework into government, and then was negotiated and then finally adopted by the UN General Assembly in 193 countries. So I think we need to realize that it's not just a UN agenda or a government agenda or a private sector agenda, it's a people's agenda at the end of the day. And as I said, it's just a culmination of thousands of years of wisdom that ultimately sustainability is what we need for the planet.
Rita, maybe you want to have a last word for this?
Yeah, for me, I just want to share like a short view only. Everything start from ourselves. If you want to impact or have one person to another person and to the world. Because if we are themselves, like for myself, if I don't practice anything and don't share anything about social sustainability, so it will nothing to myself and also the whole company and my staff as well. So everything starts from ourselves. So just do it now. Thank you.
Good. Charles, maybe you get half second. Go ahead.
No, I'll be around for the second session as well. I'm getting overtime out of me today. I think we just want to say really quickly that the SGDs are guiding principles. Right? It's still ultimately up to, say, the private sector, you as the consumer, to take those SDGs and turn them in or translate them into, I want to say, real products, real businesses, real solutions.
Actually, maybe from your side, how do I get the free well?
Fastest way.
Go ahead, last word maybe from your side.
I think more recently, Grab, we are shifting towards a more thinking about uplifting communities and again, pointing to our vision and mission, right? Uplifting the quality of life for everyone. I think more importantly, if anyone is interested, you can go online, you can download our social impact report. We have just released it for the first time in 7 years, and it's something that we plan to do moving forward. So I think this will give interesting insights about how we think as a business and how we think about impacting Southeast Asia in general moving forward.
Yes.
I think, to me, as from Saura and also investment perspective, I think the SDG is crucial, but then it's also important to build a long-lasting business. Regardless, what is being plugged into, what is being introduced by the UN or down the road, you can't fit into the system. So try to build a sound business at the
Joe, maybe last word for you and then you.
Anyway, I think a major takeaway from this really good discussion was that businesses, it makes business sense. Businesses know what sustainability means, but again, like what Charles said in the beginning, they don't use that term. They do it in practice. And I feel like we have to debunk that quote, that businesses don't only care about earning profits. They know how to do social impact good. They know how to think of what the market needs without compromising everyone else. So, yeah.
So let's see now for the next step. We're going to see how we can actually support, accelerate, and scale all those businesses to basically have much more impact, as she was saying, into the society. And one thing that if you didn't get the memo, basically, 21st century is about financing development. It's not anymore funding it. Okay, there's no more money outside. So we have to finance development from bringing public sector along and also public capital to come along and to basically accelerate the journey towards the SDGs or the SDGs plus 2, the SDGs 2.0, whatever that will come out after 30. So thank you so much, speakers and guys around this table. I hope that you enjoyed your first stage. We locked the room anyway, so you won't actually get out. So we're gonna see you in 15 minutes. Prashant, how long we have?
You can take a photo.
Okay, we are okay. So we can do quickly. Okay, sorry, we take a photo for the Facebook and for the LinkedIn. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so see you outside for the coffee, the drinks.